Beauties. Today I'm going to share my dupe of Silvery Bliss, the beautiful Oden's eye palette for this holiday season. I'm going to tell you all what shades I'm using as a dupe and swatch them on camera. If you like these kinds of videos, give this video a thumbs up and let's get started. Friends, as always, we are going to do top to bottom, left to right, swatching every single shade, and I'm going to tell you what shade I'm using. And as always, we have some extra shades for these dupes. Let's get started. Our first shade is Rose Quartz from Kathleen Lights' old collab with Colourpop. That's where this shade goes. And yes, friends, the idea for this is to again inspire you to use some of the palettes you already own. You don't need to buy new shades to dupe these new releases. Our second shade is Glisten from the Glitter Iridescent Multichrome collection of Clionadh. Glisten has a very beautiful prominent purple shift. It also has a very obvious gold shift at the edge there, and if I do this, it goes into very light bronze. Hopefully the camera's capturing the bronze effect. It's very light. And in the shade you mostly see the purple shift, but it looks very sparkly and glittery. I don't think the camera's capturing the sparkliness. Our next shade is Alpha from Sydney Grace. Alpha is a gorgeous, deep, cool-toned matte brown. For the next shade, I have two options. We have Frisky from Shine by SD, which is super, super glittery, and Cobblestone from Clionadh. I duped this palette as soon as it was revealed, so I didn't have a lot of swatches to go by. That's why I just picked whatever looked like this shade would be from the photos on Oden's Eye's website and the brand swatches they posted on there. Frisky has a beautiful magenta pink base, and it looks like it's comprised of tiny, tiny glitters. I think even my camera that rarely catches the sparkly shifts is even catching the sparkliness of this shade, so you can imagine how sparkly it is. This kind of sparkly shades I don't see very often. I think maybe the only thing that compares to this was the Glimmer collection. I think that was the name from Glaminatrix. The shifts are not super distinct, but you should be able to see the gold shift. From some angles I see a little bit of green or teal. It just literally feels like it has some teal glitters throughout. It's very, very different, as it is always with Shine by SD, and it's beautiful. And also sort of a cream taupey shift on this end. And then of course Cobblestone has a very different shift and is much more aligned with Clionadh's general black-based or light-based multichromes, going gold, green, to bronze to copper. This is what these two shades look like away from light. For the next one, I also have three options depending on the level of complexity that you would like to have in this shade. You can go with Lavendar Hill, which is just a simple shimmer but a beautiful one from Sydney Grace. Or if you have it, you can use Scream from Looxi Beauty. Or if you want to use something super special and multichromy, you can go with Hyperspace from Terramoons. Lavendar Hill is just a simple shimmer. Between the three, Scream represents most what this shade looks like in the photos of the palette. Unfortunately, because Looxi is unavailable, I had to give other alternatives, and Terramoons is my alternative because it also has a deep base. Just look at it. It's one of those shades. I can't believe a brand sold this at $3. I can't even call this a duochrome. It's totally one of those shades that brands would sell at like $15. It goes from gold to green to bronze over a deep black base, and it has tiny pink and bronze glitters throughout. And these are the shades Away from Direct Light. I couldn't understand the difference between the two reds in this row. The first one looked a tad more warm toned. For this one, I picked Karmelizowany from Glam Shop. And again, friends, these shades are usually deeper and more cool toned in reality than what I see in the viewfinder. So I'm guessing that's what you guys are going to see on camera. This next shade in the palette is a marbled white, possibly silver and pink from the photo. I don't have a marble shade like that, so I picked a very special shade that I thought would go here. This is Glitz Ritz from Looxi Beauty. Glitz and Ritz is another shade from Looxi that I would pay way more than $3 for. This shade has a beautiful bronze gold shift, and then it goes into sort of a pink purple shift. It's so gorgeous and very romantic, and it has tiny blue and silver glitters throughout. This is Glitz and Ritz Away from Direct Light. And then for the last shade in this row, I picked Hearthrob from Looxi, which is a tad bit more cool toned than Karmelizowany. It's more obvious that this is very cool toned in the swatch. And in fact, again, on camera, these always look a tiny bit more warm toned than they are in reality. I picked Haven from Sydney Grays as the first shade in the third row. In different photos, this shade goes anywhere from light purple all the way to mauve to pink. And a lot of these photos, or even videos, are modified with different softwares, so it's very difficult to know what this shade should be, but I thought Haven definitely went with other shades here. This next shade was also one of the shades that was kind of difficult to figure out, and I picked two potential options for it. The first one is Sky Flower from Looxi Beauty, a beautiful romantic pink. And then our next option is Silverlining from Shine by SD's Eternal Collection. Even Skyflower, although not as complex a shade as Silverlining, is a bit more complex than just a simple shimmer. It has a hue of gold over it from some angles. Hopefully the camera's catching it. And then, of course, Silverlining. It looks like it has tiny teal and tiny bronze particles throughout. It's not as glittery looking as Frisky, but it definitely also has tiny glitter particles. Our next shade is a bright red, and for this one, I think you all know by now I don't have, or at least I feel like I don't have a lot of reds in my collection, matte reds that can be used as singles. And this one is Berry Blitz from Looxi Beauty, and this one has a tad cool tone hue, which essentially means it has a little bit of blue in it. It's a very unique cool toned red matte. For the gold shade in this row, I picked two options, both from Looxi. First one is Stacks, a very, very beautiful and very holiday-y gold shade. And the second option is Saltwater Taffy, which is a very different shade from Stacks. But hey, if you want to go a little funky, you could use this one. It has a very interesting hue of ancient coin sort of color from some angles, and I thought that might be appropriate. Also, in some photos, Saltwater Taffy looked like it is a multichrome or a duochrome, and Stacks is definitely just a gold. As you can see, these two shades are pretty different. Saltwater Taffy is one of those shades that has that burgundy base, but then the shifts over it have the gold. They also have the beautiful teal and even some silver. I have used a lot of different shimmery reds in past dupe palettes, so I wanted to use one that I have not shown on camera yet. This is Pointsettia from Clionadh. Clionadh sometimes brings their shimmery circular pans back. I think they call these a foiled shade, and they're very nice. You should not sleep on them if you can catch them. Although it doesn't look as warm toned in the pan, in the swatch it's pretty warm toned. And the light gold shift that shows up in the swatch is there. For the beautiful deep pine color, I picked Thrilled, a gorgeous deep teal matte from Sydney Grace. I'm sure I've swatched this before in past videos. This next shade was also kind of hard to decipher. 3 options here. We have a Shroomz from Clionadh, Genesis from Looxi Beauty, and Spring Into Action if you want a funkier option. This one is from Touch of Glam. Here are the 3 shades swatched in the same order. Genesis is a little bit more complex than just being a very simple shimmer. It has a light gold shift from some angles. And then Spring Into Action is definitely pretty flaky, like all the shades in this collection. I forget the name of the collection. I'll put it in the description below. Spring Into Action looks like it has tiny blue glitters all over. I've mentioned before that I love Touch of Glam shades. The only issue with this brand is that they're pricey. And here are the 3 shades Away From Light. It's interesting because the glitters in Spring to Action in the shade look silver. And last but not least, I chose Iconosphere. This is a very deep, maybe you can call it a gray with a tad bit of a green shade. And I picked this one from Colourpop's Aurora Struck palette. Thanks so much, friends, for being here. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget a thumbs up. I've done a look with this palette in my last to buy or not to buy using a lot of the shades. That video should be recommended to you on the screen about now. Love you all. Have an awesome day, and until next time, bye!